Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I admire the two poets, Mike the Poet Sonksen and Steve Abee, who are reading today, not only for their own creativity, but for their contributions to the poetry community. Mike will read first, and then after he reads, I will introduce Steve. Mike Sonksen, AKA Mike the Poet, is a third-generation Angelino, poet, professor, journalist, historian, tour guide. His latest book, Letters to My City, was published by Writ Large Press. He's written for KCET, Poets and Writers, Wax Poetics, PBS SoCal, LA Taco, LA Review of Books, Boom, and the Academy of American Poets. His poetry's been featured on KCRW, KPCC, and KPFK, and Spectrum News. Sonksen teaches at Woodbury University and taught high school before that. Mike Sonksen is a compassionate, joyful, lyrical poet. His own poetry and his own good works in poetry for his fellow poets and his community exemplify the word communitas. A superb poet, Mike Sonksen.
Harry, thank you very much. Harry, thank you. Really great to be here with you. And Steve too, man. It's great to see you, Steve. And you were two great gentlemen, and man, this jam. I'm really just honored to be here with you guys. And I'm gonna read a bunch of different old poems, some new poems, some poems I've never really read before. And let's just have some fun. And I heard you mention Baba Ramdas and Be Here Now. And I love his work. And Steve and I have talked a lot about taking a deep breath and mindfulness. And so right off the bat, Steve, let's do that little, just 3 breaths.
Okay.
Steve has been one of my teaching advisors. Steve is an incredible high school teacher. And I've taught high school and college equally, but Steve really has been one of my mentors as just how to be a great teacher. And we've had a lot of conversations about teaching. And so I want to start off with this poem, B is for Bodhisattva, because I think, Harry, you are a Bodhisattva and Steve is a Bodhisattva. And I really like the idea of the Bodhisattva practice as far as just sharing the Dharma, sharing knowledge. And so this is a new poem. B is for Bodhisattva. B is for being. B is for beginning. B is for behold. B is for beautification. B is for blessings. B is for belief. B is for boundless. B is for Brahma. B is for building. B is for bridging. B is for bearing the burden. B is for breaking barriers. B is for bringing peace. B is for brilliant light. B is the benefit. B is for the benefit of all people. B is for because. B is for balancing nature. B is for benevolence. B is for blossoming. B is for becoming. B is for bliss. You better follow it. B is for Bruce Lee. B is for Boyle Heights. B is for best practices. B is for believers. B is for birthday. B is for beloved community. B is for the blazing the house of suffering. B is for Bodhisattva. I'm gonna read a whole bunch of poems. This next one is called They Don't Stop. It's just a really short poem. Nobuko Miyamoto wrote about seeing Grace Lee Boggs reading Jeff Chang's Can't Stop, Won't Stop when Grace was 99 years old. It don't stop when you grow your soul. This is one called Traces, Places, Faces. And Steve, I wrote this one for my students. And it's some of my teaching philosophy about being student-centered and some of the things we've been talking about.
Awesome.
Traces, places, faces, connecting spaces, cultural, historical, personal, 3 realms of interpretation, channels of communication, a way to Rainy Mountain. We slow down the conversation. writing morning pages, positions of contemplation, bridging liminal spaces, interdisciplinary relations, intersecting history and biography, tracing the lineage through journeys, nature's conflicts, knowledges, LA stories, print, sound, light, fight the good fight. My students write about personal artifacts like the ring gifted to them by their grandfather after the Armenian genocide. We put the heart in liberal arts. Traces, uncovering a series of marks, an outline, a passage, a record or physical indication of something that vanished, an etching, a great turning of pages. Take time to see the traces, observations in an essay, a litany of lyrics, critical cartography, public history, cultural geography, ecofeminism, and deep ecology. My students and I took a walk along the Los Angeles River, the concrete river, talking about man versus nature, places. I met my wife in a piano bar downstairs from the hip hop room, a circle of friends singing on the dance floor. Every day is your birthday, social locations, navigation, a locale, locus, location, a station, a designated area of meaningful activity, a center of memory, a region, a facility, a landmark, a natural site, a waterfall, an architectural marvel connected to experience, an open mic, a Socratic dialogue, two feral cats in my backyard, faces. Back in the 1980s, I was picking mint leaves with my grandmother in Long Beach. People are a beacon, family, women and men in the city, friends, colleagues, associates, long lost cohorts from childhood, aces of the neighborhood, uniting heart and mind, together spending time. Let's bring it back to the work that reconnects. Building community, draw your history, a reframing, intergenerational exchanging, historiography, sharing authority, autoethnography. It comes back to you and me sharing space, traces, places, faces. All right. Steve, you ever read N. Scott Momaday?
I have not. No, but I'm familiar. I know that he wrote the, was it? I have not.
The only one of his I read was The Way to Rainy Mountain. Okay. But it was interesting because it was like, you know, that kind of prose poetry that's sort of in between genres. But every single chapter, he had 3 points of view. He had the personal, the historical, and the cultural. And so I started doing these things with my students where I sometimes would have them write something from 3 points of view, write it from a personal point of view, write it from this sort of historical point of view, and then try to write it from like a cultural point of view. And it was somewhat like when we would talk about the concrete and the abstract and kind of mixing up the different perspectives. So
right on.
Anyway, so, and some of the N. Scott Momaday was real abstract, but sometimes all of a sudden he's talking about taking a walk in the desert with his grandmother. And there was some things like that I really enjoyed. And the students seemed to connect to it. So I told them to, you know, write some oral history. Tell us some stories, some places you went with your father, or what'd you guys do on Sundays? Was there a restaurant you always went to? Mm-hmm. I got this one is a kind of a little short. It's called Running Around the City. My autobiography laced with poetry accelerated at 18 running around the city. UCLA sociology, understanding, urban planning, jump in geography, creative nonfiction, flipping spoken word diction, backpack rap, underground hip hop, garage band punk rock, New Left Review, Kerouac Blues, Bukowski Coffee House Cruise, open mic news, choose your own adventure. Enter the stage. From the page, wordplay for days, reading every day about ancestors, an ongoing oral history, always listening, keeping my ear around sacred ground, every part of town I could be found. By the late 90s, I wanted to write professionally, but I wasn't quite sure how or where to do it. So I started hitting open mics anywhere I could, while in the daytime giving city tours and freelance writing about neighborhoods and local music. Every year I was moving from 18 to 30, Westwood, Sawtell, Culver City, Hollywood, Pico, Koreatown, Inglewood, Monterey Park. Friendships, the heart, expansion in art, finding peace in public space and architecture, wishing the weather, a window of inner work. I did an internet search for self-worth. I found it on my shirt, written in my heart. Running around the city kickstarted the art. This one is titled Synchronicity. Energy aligns in a meaningful coincidence, synchronicity. Eyes lock across a crowded room in synchronicity. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud talking for 12 hours sailing to America, synchronicity. Jimi Hendrix jamming in Paris with Jim Morrison, synchronicity. Divine timing as a cosmic arrangement, this is synchronicity. The last brownie left on the table is synchronicity. Lana Turner ditched class to be discovered at Schwab's drugstore, synchronicity. The universe harmonizing in time and space, synchronicity. Running into a long-lost love can be synchronicity. A chance encounter at Grand Central Market is synchronicity. The Police's final record and biggest seller was synchronicity. The only poet in a singer-songwriter showcase is synchronicity. Sutra recitations chanted togetherness and harmony, synchronicity. Many embody one in spirit, synchronicity. Harry, I like that East Hollywood book, man.
Oh, thank you. I was grateful that you wrote a nice review of it. I'm always appreciative, not only for me, but what you do for your fellow poets. You're always a very empathetic and supportive person. And, we all need that. I always say that it's important to have a community of poets so that each poet can go further. So thank you.
Thank you. And I got the feeling from reading that book that you really knew the local landscape. You were taking walks around the neighborhood and you had friends. And I love that kind of locality.
Well, I did walk. I walk all the time there. I walk here a lot, but I love walking in East Hollywood.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on around there right now. And there's a young poet who left in there's a young kid I know. Well, he's 30, but he just did a whole little publication about oral history of East Hollywood and about redlining and gentrification, and a real young Chicano kid that grew up right by LA City College. Really nice kid and doing really great work. And he just published a whole thing about East Hollywood. And I was thinking about you, and I need to get this kid a copy of your book because he's trying to connect dots, and he's trying to he wants to do a thing about the history of LA City College, because a lot of heavy people have come through LA City College, but a lot of people don't realize that LA City College, and Mike Davis said in his last book that in the 60s, LA City College was the first place where white and black activists got together, leftists and Black Panthers and everybody. And Lionel Rolfe, who just passed a couple years back, Lionel Rolfe wrote a little bit about it, but it's, LA City College. So this kid is trying to do kind of a history of East Hollywood and LA City College. And I'm gonna make sure that he sees your book.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, you know what? This is a old poem of mine. I used to be a tour guide. I used to go to Flagstaff, Arizona and Grand Canyon. And this is a poem about Arizona. And the Amtrak station sits right in the middle of Flagstaff, Arizona, right next to old Route 66. Almost 100 trains pass through the town every single day. Flagstaff trains keep coming and moving and coming and moving. And every time a train passes, the conductor blows his horn, echoing across the valley. Flagstaff trains keep coming. The trains are so loud, every time I sleep in Flagstaff, I have trains in my dreams. Suddenly I'm on a train riding up and down northern Arizona mountains, cutting through ponderosa pines below a firmament of stars, coming and moving through the cold mountain air. Flagstaff trains keep coming. All night long, you're hearing trains. When you're partying in downtown Flagstaff off Route 66, dancing to bluegrass in a funky fiddle bar, you're hearing those trains coming and moving and coming and moving. Flagstaff trains keep coming. The wicked horn whistles on a hot summer day. Trains keep coming. Even in January snow, the conductor's letting us know trains keep coming. No matter what I'm doing when I'm in Flagstaff, all I'm hearing is horn blowing trains. There's damn near one every 10 minutes, coming and moving and coming and moving. Flagstaff trains keep coming. The trains are a reminder that the world never stops, so we keep on moving, running and cruising and coming and moving. Flagstaff trains keep coming. A couple years back, I went to Tokyo. So here's a bunch of little haiku, informal haiku, but a bunch of haiku about running around Japan. A wave of people loaded up in a train car, Tokyo rush hour. Extra narrow roads, hidden sidewalks and bridges, webs of citizens. Tokyo sky tree, towering into the clouds, elevator falls. Hillside waterfall, Lake Ashi, cold spring water, cascading blossoms. A sea of cedars, timber turning to maples, mist clings to treetops. So many cedars, foothills filled with forests, wishes are magnets. Uncut canopy, the tree is the deity, the floor is lava. Moss grows on wet rocks, clouds covering Mount Fuji. Whoa, technology. City of towers, a nation of grasshoppers, spring cherry blossoms. Shinto shrines aligned, rectangular rice paddies, webs of waterways. Field of four islands, city situation, sacred pilgrimage. The great sacred hall, service, solidarity, spirit of sharing. The sacred altar, Nawano's rite of passage, enter the interior. No subject object, deep unity upon us, sharing the moment. Public Zen gardens, a cluster of fellowship, a house of worship. A water spider, a legion of 9 dragons, desire is fire. Zen brutalism, bamboo minimalism, old ornate bridges. Rising sun city in a tangled symmetry, morning birds singing. In Suganuma, next to an ancient tombstone, a caterpillar. Melt with the mountain, clouds connecting consciousness, we are all one. All right. Let me see here. All right. What does my time look like, Harry?
Well, you know, it's you got 13 more minutes, and if you would like to save a couple minutes, so I could ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, you know what? I'll do 3 more poems, and then we'll go from there.
Great.
Okay. This one is called Sociology. I was a sociology undergraduate. Social formation, causation, sociological imagination intersecting biography, personal history, artistic forms marry the popular with the scholarly. History making, human agency, social relations, organized reality, social location, share authority, transmutation, think dialectically, geographic literacy, self-determination, public history, concentration, neuro-linguistic programming. I see it, I feel it, I know it, I got it. I was born in Long Beach, lived all my life in LA County. Though I've stayed local, I grew up jumping geography, running around the city, working in every corner. I found my community performing poetry and writing neighborhood stories. I learned what it means to be accountable, teaching high school and raising my kids. We are all interconnected. Recitations, layers of identity, the daily practice, types of practicality, the present history, future responsibility. So we sing about society. This is sociology, transformative solidarity, problems, methods, theory. But all of this sociology really just comes back to you and me. All right, 2 more poems. Los Angeles A to Z. Around Arcadia, Alhambra, and Artesia, after Atwater and Arleta along Atlantic, big rig trucks blow by Balboa, Bellflower, Beverly Hills, and Burbank, but not Bergamot. Burbs be calm connectors, cool out in Carson, Crenshaw, Covina, Cudahy, Culver City, Coldwater Canyon, and Commerce Casino. Commuters catch that crunch down Doheny, delivering dudes to Downey. Don't dismiss Dolby in downtown Disney. Eventually east of El Monte, it's easier than El Segundo, exit at Awanda for Ford factories far faster than Flower Figueroa. Fontana, Flora, and Fauna. Grove's got Ghost in Glendale and Glen Oaks. Gates got closed in Garden Grove, Gardena, and Garvanza. How many hosts had high hopes in Hollywood? How about Halloween's Home in Hawthorne? Who got hoodooed on Hoover? How about hype in Hacienda Heights? Is it intricate on Imperial? Is industry invisible to individuals in Inglewood? Is it indivisible to jump junctions on Jefferson? Juxtapose jets again. Justice is jettisoned in a jurisdiction. Kicking it in Koreatown. Catch karma clowns cataloging key kinetic characters living in Los Angeles and Lenox. Look at Long Beach's long streets, like Lakewood. Learn about La Mirada, La Palma, La Puente, Lomita, and Lawndale. Meet Morrissey in Montebello, Monty in Montrose. Make a mark in Monterey Park, maybe more in Monrovia. Nobody knows Norton on Normandy or north of Northridge, nor their neighbors on Northup and North Hollywood. Oh, Olympic, Olive, and Alvera Street. Order over in Orange County, operate on Ontario's Observatory. Pedestrians pose in Pico Rivera, pursuing passion in Pasadena. Pour it out in Paramount. Queue up quickly at Queen of the Valley. Quest quintessentially for quality at Quiet Canyon. Remember Robertson, the Rose Bowl, Rosecrans, Rose Hills, and Rosemead. Somewhere south of Santa Ana, Sam Sanders sings San Marino's song saluting Soto. Tourists take trains to Trader Joe's, Tulare, Turnbull Canyon, Torrance, Tujunga, and Tarzana. Under Universal City, up to Union Station, up above University, Voyagers vibe on Vermont and Victory, viewing Van Nuys, Valley Village, and Victorville's vicinity. Wandering west to Wieseneck, watching Westerns, West Adams, and Westchester. Examine Excelsior's exposition along Eximino, exiting Xanadu. You got Young Yogurt on York Boulevard, Youthful Unity in Yosemite, Zanku is Zen. Zone into Zeitgeist, zip up your zoot suit and zoom, 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 Zion to Zuma. All right, and the last piece I'm gonna do is the first piece of my book, Letters to My City. I am still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, even as the price of rent rises and gridlock strangles central arteries. I'm old enough to remember disco parties in the build-up to the 1984 Olympics and news reporters like Jerry Dunphy and Hal Fishman. I remember when Fernando Valenzuela was a rookie. Years before I loved Wanda Coleman and Bukowski, my first LA poets were Chick Hearn and Vince Scully. Then I read Mike Davis and Carrie McWilliams and watched The Gospel of Huell Hauser. Looking at things that aren't here anymore, recalling former glory like Ralph's story, I'm still exploring from Panorama City to Pomona. I'm still alive in Los Angeles as they build high-speed trains down Crenshaw and out into the San Gabriel Valley. Changes in transportation for the new generation foreshadow the nation's transformation as millennials on bicycles call for return of the Garden City. Green in the 21st century is a matter of survival. Witness the revival of the wetlands. The riparian watershed as a sentinel for sustainability, unbridled consumption as a liability. Observe residents of Angel City playing their part to restore nature's heart. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. From festivals to funerals, baby showers to weddings, each generation ever more beautiful, reality is ever musical. Throngs of people mix and match, creating the patchwork mosaic of multicultural souls coming together to call LA home. The community is a poem in progress called Los Angeles. The angels in the city sing the synchronicity from Central to Century City. Olympic was 10th Street and Pio Pico was the last governor of California when it belonged to Mexico. He was born a Spanish citizen. See the city's end soaring to Satori on a Saturday morning, circling the Evergreen Cemetery or hiking up hills in Culver City. I'm still alive in Los Angeles as mamas monitor laundromats. From Lancashire to Long Beach, I walk the long streets. From Magnolia to Manchester, Rosemead to Redondo Beach, I'm still alive in Los Angeles, though there's no more open space. Most of the wetlands have been replaced by condos, Trader Joe's, and makeshift dog parks. The expanding corporate heart charts a frenzied facelift of never-ending Christmas, but only a few are on that wish list. There's a generation of kids on Snapchat and commuters want that fast track. Alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles, thanks to family, friends, and poetry. The past, present, and future of my city gives me energy. Untold generations of history from Biddy Mason to Chavez Ravine to Toyo Miyazaki, punctuating the power plays, turning the page, sharing authority, because we all share the story of the city unfolding. There's no hierarchy. We all belong to this city. It's all herstory. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. And today I drive around LA with my son and daughter, like I once rode with my grandfather. There's no more Perinos of the Brown Derby, but there's still Fosselmans, Coles, Philippe's in the pantry. My children spill ice cream in the back seat with me. Together we are alive in the city of destiny. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. I'm still alive in Los Angeles. LA! Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Steve.
That was breathtaking, beneficent, beatific, and you are an LA guy. LA cuz why? Cuz LA. You're fabulous. I just love the personal work, your awareness of the landscape. You're living in the here and now. I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, and then I just want to make one more comment about some of your poems. But just to start with the questions, when did you write your first poem?
I wrote a few in elementary school here and there. I remember one in sixth grade I wrote that my mom still has or whatever, but then a little bit in junior high, but in the 11th grade in high school, I had a really cool English teacher that made us write like a collection of poems. And we wrote like 20 poems. And I recently found it, and obviously most of them suck. I was 16, but it was fun. And my first year at UCLA, when I was 18, I started experimenting a lot, and we were going to the open mics and going to shows, and I was going to Beyond Baroque. I was in the audience for a few years before I ever got up on any kind of stage. You know, I mean, I remember first hearing about Beyond Baroque on KCRW and kind of little by little going to little coffee houses in the early mid 90s. So I kind of credit the 90s to when I really got excited about it. But, you know, I always loved reading.
And what is it about the poetry form that attracts you?
I think there is a freedom of poetry to experiment. And I think initially when you first start, maybe it's like the fact that you don't have to have punctuation if you don't want to, you know, and initially, but as it's funny, as time has gone on, I've actually done a lot more formal. I've used more formalism than I used to. I was originally super free verse, spoken word, you know, performance based, but as I've gotten older, I've done a little bit more formal type. But I don't know. Poetry is just there's a lot of freedom in poetry, and you know, if you have these emotions and these things, you don't quite know where to put them. A poem is a nice place to put it.
And one thing I've noticed about your poetry, and maybe you could just run through one of your poems about how you write, but you just have the aspect of the words just come tumbling out and they just keep coming. And do you write, let's just take any poem that you want to talk about, or just generally, how do you write a poem? Do you write it all in one shot? Or do you think about poetry before you write it? You know, just whatever you want to say along those lines.
I used to do the old Peter Elbow, Julia Cameron free write, just let it go kind of thing. And Steve and I have talked about the free write. You know, you can never the journal free write. But I will say now, sometimes I'll even use forms. Like I've been doing some villanelles in the last few years, but I write essays as much as I write poems. So sometimes I'm writing in my journal, and you know, maybe you just have 4 lines that fit. And so there are some times where I've been lucky enough to write a piece where a lot of it just comes out in one try. But there's plenty of pieces where you're putting little, like the old collage, right, or the bricolage, as they say. You know, there's a lot of pieces now that I do, but I will admit, I was very much heavily under the influence of music, and I was listening to early hip hop, the early 90s hip hop, but also I was listening to a lot of jazz and Pharoah Sanders and you know, John Coltrane and Miles Davis, and also the funk and soul of Roy Ayers and Donald Byrd. And so music was an influence. There was a lot of music that was an influence.
Well, how did you write your poem about the LA alphabet? Was that in one shot, or was that little by little, or gathering?
A little bit of both, you know, because it's that form, the abecedarian, you know, and there's actually a famous hip hop song where this rapper goes A to Z through the alphabet. This guy named Tumex, and he has a poem called Audible. It was a song called Audible Angels. He's all, attention all audible angels before brains blow. And I was playing that song for my class, and I thought, well, you know what? Just to show them, a lot of times when I give my students an assignment, I'll do it with them. And so that one was a poem that I wrote 3-4 years ago, where I wrote it with my students. And I will also admit, I got out a map, and I was like, what neighborhood did I leave out? Oh, I better get Northridge, you know, let me get Panorama City. You know? So that poem, like, I will use maps, or like, I like mapping. And so sometimes, you know, I'll use resources. Like I tell students, it's not cheating to use a dictionary, you know, or a map or something.
I always love your naming and your awareness of what's right in front of you, your mindfulness. And so it's really a thrill. You know, you lift me up, you lift all of us up, and it's breathtaking in many respects. And it's just a pleasure and a privilege to hear you read your poetry and to hear you talk about it. So I just want to thank you one more time, Mike, for all that you have done for poetry and your own marvelous poetry.
Hey, thank you, Harry. And, you know, I quoted you in something about Venice and Beyond Baroque when you said something about Emersonian self-experience. Yeah, Harry, thank you so much. And man, I'm excited to hear Steve. You know, I tell this, Steve heard me tell this story a bunch of times, but Lewis McAdams told me about Steve a good 5-6 years before I met Steve. And at the time, Lewis McAdams' son was in Steve's class. And in 1999, my buddy Phil and I were doing a lot of things with Lewis McAdams, and Lewis was like, hey man, you got to read this poet, Steve Abee. So I went and bought Steve's King Planet. And I was, oh, this is cool. You know, this is cool dude. And then 5-6 years later, my buddy Gershwin, who's a longtime friend of mine, knew Steve from the coffee house, the Onyx and everything. And he was like, man, and then I met Steve. I was like, hey dude, Lewis told me about you years ago. And then Steve ended up becoming my friend and as cool as Lewis said he was. So I'm glad to thank you guys.
Well, I thank you. I talked to Phoebe McAdams recently, and she told me how much Lewis McAdams loved both of you. And so I'm glad that you brought him up. And now, after that marvelous reading by Mike, we're going to hear from another wonderful poet. Steve Abee is a poet and teacher who lives in Los Angeles, author of several books, Johnny Future, The Bus, Great Balls of Flowers. He seeks to explore the divine in reflections of the daily mind. On why he started writing, quote, I saw the fragility and blessedness of lives and started to come apart in the wonderment of it all, so thought I better write stuff down, end of quote. Steve Abee's poetry is personal, imaginative, and hopeful. He writes about family, place, baseball. Clarity and richness of language are in his poetry. I love his Fernando, quote, the best dodger on the mound since Koufax and Drysdale, a finisher, you needed no bullpen, end of quote. The movement in his poetry is exhilarating. Out of darkness, he brings illumination. His, quote, music does not rust, end of quote. A splendid poet, Steve Abee.
Hey, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Mike, it's great to hear you, man. You're crazy. That's awesome. Yeah, it's true. It's the whole like just word stream. Yeah, that and the city, that Absidarium was really cool. Really cool. Such a great forum. All right. So I was like, what do I read? What do I read? Now listening to you guys, I got some ideas. So I'm going to start with actually I pulled up Fernando. So I'll read that one first. So this was written way back in a million years ago. It was in a Harvey Kubernick produced poetry CD back in the early 90s, late 80s. Harvey Kubernick was this kind of awesome producer of Los Angeles Word. Harry, I know you did a bunch of things on his records with him. But anyway, he did one that was called Innings and Quarters, I think. It was a sports. So I was part of that. Fernando, the best dodger on the mound since Koufax and Drysdale, a finisher. You needed no bullpen. You had all the answers written on the ball. You were the truest dodger at 19 with no English, throwing a pitch that no one could understand, throwing from the deepest blue, through the sweatshops, the day workers at the corner, through the ghosts of the ravine, whispering in the dugout as the chant of your name, starting in the bleachers, rose to your eyes, to the clouds. That's my Fernando meditation. Because if those of you who are not familiar with Fernando Valenzuela, he was a phenomenon and really changed the image of the Dodgers to be inclusive of the Latino community, which had really just had been estranged from the Dodger organization since the Chavez Ravine, removal. So also he had this, if you ever watched him pitch, ever see pictures of, he's always like, as he's pitching, his eyes are up at the sky. So, that was my little riff on his pitching motion. And he pitched a screwball, which nobody ever has. Nobody had, before him, there was like one pitcher who was really successful with it named Bob Feller from way back in, in the 1950s, I think. But nobody did the screwball and nobody's done it since. Anyway, that's my Fernando piece.
Hey, that's a great poem, man. You need to bring that back. I love that, man.
Well, here it is. Yeah, I should put it someplace. I should do a lot of things. I sit around. I got to write a poem about the things I should do. Okay, note to myself. It should poem. My goodness. I'm shitting all over the place. It's getting a little stinky. Bad joke. I'm sorry. You can't say that on public TV. Are we on TV? I don't know. But Harry, thank you so much for the invitation. You know, I really, I've always, you know, you're such an important voice in my own poetic development. You know, like you have this, you know, your poetic was so, to me, you know, essential in like the Los Angeles aesthetic of just, you know, speaking this invisible language that is both like, you know, totally accessible, but completely mysterious. I mean, I think Los Angeles is one of those places. I mean, you have a poem about it, how difficult it is to be a poet in LA. And that the great image of you, I mean, at least in my mind, the image of you standing on the freeway, you know, overlooking, you know, standing over the 101, you know, just kind of talking to the spirits. I've always really been heartened by that because, you know, to be a poet who's, you know, invested in the Los Angeles landscape. I think with your line is like, you know, it's a lonely thing, you know, but that is essence Los Angeles to me, you know, to really embrace the distance and the space between things, you know, and I've always really appreciated your commitment to the word and, you know, and your aesthetic, man, your poems on the bus. My goodness. I remember those readings where you have just like, you know, sitting on the bus, just like, you know, riffing on the people. It was very much an inspiration for my own, you know, bus work. Yeah, really great stuff. So thank you for this invitation. And Mike, it's always good to see you, brother. So you also mentioned Philippe's in one of your poems. So I'm going to read something I wrote there because, yeah, I'm a high school English teacher and I work not too far from Philippe's. So I will stop there on occasion, maybe more than an occasion, maybe like once or twice a week on the way to work and get a little oatmeal. And they have the sweetest little donuts. If you guys, it's the most beautiful little donuts. They have plain cake, sugar, and cinnamon. And it's like, anyway, so that's one of my little. So 7/16, March 2nd, which is funny. I'm reading this. I'm going, so, you know, the whole pandemic shutdown was literally like, you know, a week and a half away. So, but do I mention it? No, probably not. At Philippe's, oatmeal and coffee with newspaper, and I feel the need to write something. Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders. God is love and alive and everything is basically what I want to say. I saw, felt, knew that this morning. It was simple and momentary and obvious. Of course, the maker of all things is in all things. I think he is amused and troubled by all things he finds himself shaped into these days. Lots of plastic trash and some nastiness, but it is God. They is it. God and they is in there, whatever there is. God, a word I learned as a child for this necessarily unknowable mystery that has been given all kinds of suspect qualities, such as beard and sandals and white skin, etc., which I realize is easier, thus popular. And how do you indoctrinate kids with the idea of an ever-present creative principle that stretches through all manner of time and space, thing and not, concrete personality and abstract presence? Huh? How? But wouldn't Sunday school be cooler if they did? What if they had kids just sit there and go, okay, everything you're feeling right now, that is God. That sweat on the back of your neck, that itch in your shoe, that sad thing getting all crinkly and crumbly inside your belly, the joy twitch right next to that, all of that is God. The sound of my voice, the sound waves coming across the room to you and falling into your ear and being something, all that is God. It is the one thing maker and made and unmade, yeah, all of it. And you cannot prove it. You can only know it. You can not prove everywhere everything presence. Proof requires absence and negativity. To be means the reality of not being must be true as well, I think. And that simply is not the case with the all in everything big hand of yes. It just is in all, the all house with a thing, you know? It's there because it isn't over there. It's here. One thing is because it also isn't. I am this body and such because I can see what I am not. That is a function of this kind of place, of this kind of rock and this kind of orbit around this kind of sun. And it seems so true because we are shaped by all of that body, rock, orbit, sun, space. And to see in it and past it and around it, well, it takes some doing. It takes some stopping and some not doing. It takes some wondering, wonder not knowing. Let go of certainty and uncertainty. Oh, wonder, oh, wander, oh, wandering thing through everything. Oh, God, body, essence in the making and unmaking. Oh, light of time and absence, the moments that are there and those that are not. Oh, the emptiness, the incomplete nature of being, any being. No piece the whole, just pieces that we are and are not. We are and we are not. I am my arm, but I am not just my arm. I am my eye, but I am not just my eye. I have my mind, very much my mind, but not just my mind. No way. Got too much God body here, and now in the sweat of my being. Oh, mind of I, who made you? The I house, the I builder, mind shaping the voice and beliefs of the I, holding them, giving voice to them. Oh, mind God, body God, impermanence God, full of feelings God, oh, fear God, oh, body, what a machine you are, that is me. Mind-shaping machine, body-shaping thoughts and dreams, mind-shaping body. Body is a sweaty, pissing extension of thoughts. What am I thinking as I piss in the middle of the night? There goes my mind. What secret needs emanate in sweat? The stink of needs spill across the streets. Oh, that smell, too new and vulnerable for us, reminding us of our lostness, incompleteness, openness, heartbeat, holdingness, messness, lost in our here-ness, lost in these pieces of God, dog, you, and that nature, incomplete nature, holding strands of being together with that iron gossamer heart thread. Love, baby. God is love, baby. God is a love, baby. Love, baby, in the middle of the night, moonlight through the bathroom window over the mulberry tree, light spilling down and light through the leaves and everything. Got to go to work.
Whoa.
That was one of my Philippe's meditations. I have the moleskin there while I am, contemplating whatever, the day's lesson, the lessons of the day. Awesome. So let's see. Anyway, I have, let me put this away. I put Fernando away. Anyway, just one of the beauties of writing, I think, is just, Harry, as Holly wrote in the last collection that we read, I love thinking, and I feel like that's the gift of the writer, just being able to, if nothing else, obviously, the creative combination of language and all that, but just the blessedness of just thinking. And I'm just so grateful to have that, as part of my life. I just think about how, like how much like flexibility of spirit it is allowed, I just watched for the first time that movie, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And Warren Beatty's character, as he's being hunted by the assassin, is talking to himself in the mirror. And, he's a hustler. He's a pimp. He's a gambler. He's also, a charlatan. But he's got this great line where he says, like, I've got the poetry in me. Maybe I can't write it down, but it's in me. And that's special. And I'm like, that's exactly why he's like, he's a success. I mean, the movie's beautiful. I won't spoil it. It's on Criterion right now. It's an Altman, 70s Western. So it's full of these like anti-tropes, but just that idea of poetry as this like essential element of like, creative, living, the flexibility of spirit, the ability to dance with yourself, to have, perspective, to be able to watch, the beauty of thinking. That's kind of what the Philippe's poem is about, if nothing else, just the unleashing of the thought. So here's a poem called Dear Everything, just to, make it specific. Dear Everything. Dear change, dear everything changing. Thank you for your holy right now, Ram Dass. Thank you for your constant teaching. You are voices moving in the hallways of time and desire. You are molecular moment being this and then this. A room full of voices asking questions and talking back. Classroom. You never stop and maybe never listen, or maybe you're listening to everything. You are everything. Wild spinning thing without control and always being the same and not at all being the same. All voices, all sounds, we are all sounds. Dear sound, that is all this is. A sound of bone, a sound of mud, the sound of air and floor, the voice creating this being, God all the time. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? God, dog, God, all the time blooming. Dear time blooming change flowers of now in the happiness vacuum of life, in the party of minds, in the house of bones, in the sea of being. Oh, time blood change flower. Oh, heartbeat breath house. Oh, sunrise perceiver. Oh, human house. Oh, sunrise believer. Sunrise, sunrise, sunrise. Oh, sunrise. Dear sunrise, I am sunrise house blooming change flower now. Bone dog, the everything changing, the wonderful making, the heartbeat breath buoy bobbing on the water, becoming the shore. There you go. There you go. Okay. So here's another one, ideas and things. Little riff on The Good Doctor and Willicross Williams' ideas about the ideas are in things. I forget exactly the line he used, but ideas and things. There are no things without ideas. Not here, not for us. Before us, the leaves and oceans curled and rolled before us. Was it an idea that made them, that floated in them, that gave them animation? Or is that what brought us into relation with these things? Did we plant ideas in them so as to be somewhere, know something, to have purpose, to hold on to? Or did the things wait for us in their silence, gurgling and chewing things? The air and steam rising from mud into eyes, mind, voice, house, saying things, this thing, here in this container. And it is. And within it lies, exists, lays the idea. In the tree, there is growing. In the street, there is going. In the film, there is seeing self, body, container of idea. See something, become someone or not. Become someone or run from someone or not. And then we are all at the table from being and writing and words, for being and writing and words. Words for pinning each moment's fleshy dress, the dress of being, to the walls of being. There is within you everything, the idea, the word, seed, holder of things. That's going back to your mention of the whole abstract concrete, which is something I bring into the classroom, but it's just a contemplation of that, that which we contain. The human experience is this great crossroads of the idea and the concrete and the abstract. So just kind of fooling with that there in that one. Yeah. So I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of just reading them out there. I'm into responses. I'm into the questions too, Harry. So I don't want to, take up too much time reading if there's more time you want to spend talking. But I always feel funny just kind of like reading, throwing these crazy things out there, and I'm just like, what does this mean to anybody? Like ideas and things. It's like, that really just, because to me, it's just like a personal little meditation on, things that I think about. And I just wonder what they mean to others. So, so we're doing this till 2. So you want me to read one more and then you want to have some questions, or?
That would be fine, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to hear one more, Steve. And then, yeah, your existential connections are a lot of fun to talk about. So I want to hear one more and then let's talk, bro.
All right. Well, let me, geez, I opened up so many of these things. I write a lot of poems. Well, I write a lot of pieces with my students. Whenever they do a journal, I do a journal as well, like Mike was saying. So I was inspired by that. So let's see. Let's see. Where'd it go? Huh. Okay. Well, I can't find it. I opened it up, but hold on one sec. Let me oh, there it is. Yeah, sorry, my mistake. Love is not. Free write from last December. Love is not an eyesore, and it is not a baseball bat to the head. It is not something that has no feet or eyes or fingers or hands, though it could be if that thing doesn't have them. Love is not. Can't say what love is not, because it's everything really. Love is not the undoing of is, which means that you want to take it all apart, but you don't know how. Or you take it all apart and you shouldn't because the should has it. Okay, mumbling in the fog and wandering in the rain yard, and wandering in the train yard. Where is there a tree with mirrors and shining dominoes? I remember I was young, which feels like not that much different than now, except that I wanted to go more places than I currently do, or thought I should. But I didn't know about home-style warm time love and grind your own beans coffee. I mean, I knew about those things, but didn't know that was really the goal, the bottom line, the only thing that matters, kind of. So love is not being with what matters. Love is foreverness. Loch Ness, not a monster. No photo taken of love. Love is not a photo, though I have seen some where love was in the background or had clearly been in the picture, but just left as the shutter clicked. So I thought of love, but love is not a stay still kind of thing, though it is everywhere, like light, like attention, like the gaze of reality, the God gaze, the universe gaze, the star gaze, the it gaze, the sun gaze, the gas gaze, the tree gaze, the shoe gaze, the wonder gaze, the chill gaze, the cold gaze, the warm gaze, the time gaze, the rattling softly in the shoes of hallelujah now. Oh, smoke, rain, drink, night, the coffee house dream gaze. Love is not freaking out, just screaming at 3 trees or 4 trees. It is not that. Though love watches that. It is right there waiting for the crazy to come back to the sunlight that it stands in. Oh boy, how much we don't know about the stuff that is all around us. But it's our insides. They get so scared and feel so lonely being cut off from everything. And they really like ice cream. And if you don't have ice cream, our insides get all worried and freak out. Now that's love.
Oh, thank you for your inspiring, and your poetry has such holy energy in it and such vibrancy, and it's always specific. And I would just like to say a couple things and then ask you a couple of questions. Your poetry always seems to be blossoming. You know, you see the sunrise and everything. And it's really a blessing to hear you and to hear Mike today. It's just really an enchanting and rapturing hour. But let me just ask you these 2 questions. When did you write your first poem, Steve?
Oh, it's funny. I found a poem about that. I wrote my first poem, like it was a school project in elementary school about the wind following me home. And then like I wrote my second poem as like this come on to any girl I was trying to flirt with. And I was in junior high. And I literally had like a blank space to be filled in by whoever I was talking to. It's true. That's a totally true story. So I was aware of the power of words and the poetic intention, I think, very early on. But like, I guess in high school, I had some friends that were into writing, and I just decided that I'm gonna write poetry. I'll be the poet of the group. It's just then I went to college and took a creative writing class, And, at UC Santa Cruz, and it was just a blossoming. I had a really great, cool teacher, guy Ken Weisner, who was the editor of the Quarry West magazine, which I'm not sure if it's still up there, but it's the one that Raymond Carver was the editor of when he was in Santa Cruz. And, so there was this real kind of attention to poetry. It was like I just like lucked out and clicked into this really extant, the extant world of the poetic imagination. Was doing great reading, like the reading list was really awesome and inspiring. So something like that, with young kind of mischievous intentions, and then just kind of a social decision. And then, you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're eventually going to get a haircut. So that's, I think, what happened. I just hung out with poetry, and next thing you know, it's on the business card, if I ever get a business card.
Well, thank you, Steve. You may have already answered the question, but what is it about poetry that attracts you?
Well, I think going back to the Warren Beatty, line, it's just this like essential spiritual flexibility. Seeing the life in things. It's just like it's ecstatic. I mean, every poet, whoever's writing poetry, whoever's sitting down who said I wrote a poem, they are investing that language with a kind of ecstatic energy. Just to be saying I'm stopping here and I wrote a poem. And it's like, so I think something about that was, really attractive. I kind of grew up with a kind of an awareness of this, spiritualized nature of things. And that was just something that was really attractive too. And then when I read the Beat Generation guys, actually, that's a big part of my own, my own trajectory. There was that, that wholly energized moment of the daily, experience. And that was, really something that I found really attractive and important. But I really feel like having the poetic flexibility is so important for being able to make meaning out of this, very challenging thing called life. And I think you see the lack of it. And I think this has been said, people die for the lack of it all the time. But you see the lack of it in so many people's lives, where they're just like the frustration turns into strange political decisions or strange, violence. And it's just like, that person doesn't know their own poetic value, in the midst of whatever their struggle is. I just feel like it's really an important, essential language. And I think I was attracted to that.
Well, I could go on talking to you. I could see Jennifer's there. I would just like to say one quick thing before I turn it over to Jennifer. I want to thank both of you gentlemen. You're really inspiring and you're wonderful poets and examples. And I'm sure that the students who study with you could not have better teachers. So God bless you both. And here's Jennifer Clymer.
I actually have a couple of questions for you guys. What an incredible hour. And again, Harry, thank you. The music that you brought in your poetry. Now, I talk about musicality sometimes, and I will ask questions of the different poets that Harry's brought on. But very specifically for the two of you, you use the repetition of phrases. And for me, that you hear that in music. That's something that you can do with lyrics that you intend to do with lyrics. That's, the refrain. The refrains that you guys use in the poetry add so much energy and emphasis to the point that you're making. Is that something that is not like trending, but is that something that you find with your generation of poets?
I don't know if it's a generational thing. I mean, it's, rhythm, rhythm is, heartbeat. It's essential. And, it's one of the ways of creating the kind of, it's one of the ways of creating structure in your piece. So since I don't use rhyme, I use different rhythmic structures. And also it's just a kind of, going back to, Mike was talking about the influence of jazz on his writing. That was also I grew up with my dad was a big jazz head, and I have, just a lot of those, that kind of like, rhythmic structure and allowance to, kind of explore and embrace different, like, rhythmic suggestions. Kind of like what Whitman does, if you read his long poems, they're all organized around like just different like rhythmic blossoms. He gets into one riff and then he just starts to go with it, almost like like a jazz musician in some ways. So I don't know if it's generational, but for me it's definitely and it's part of that, also that life, that like just that energized language, just the fun of the fun of language, so
yeah, Mike, same question, and then I've got an additional question for that as well. If you guys don't mind going a few minutes beyond 2 o'clock. Okay.
It's great to be here. And the thread, the repetition, the theme, the refrain, it does give some continuity. Steve is right about some structure. I will say that my grandfather and my uncle were both really accomplished songwriters, and they wrote a lot. And so my grandfather was always writing, and so like the chorus and the hook, and I've been around a lot of singer-songwriters and rappers, and so sometimes the repetition is something that you can always fall back to. Like I have this poem, I'm alive in Los Angeles. I'm alive in Los Angeles. I'm alive in Los Angeles, and so the repetition is a thread. And I like what Steve was saying about the riff too, because you riff off of one idea and then you go to the next riff. And so I think repetition, or some of the more technical words, like anaphora, which I used to say anaphora, but like, or epistrophe, which, there's Martin Luther King used the anaphora. I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. Or, the repetition at the end of the line, the epistrophe, we shall overcome, we shall overcome. It's something I think that's been used in, whether it be in sermons, whether it be, even in prose, even in writing an essay, when you use repetition, I think maybe it also helps a listener. Maybe it grounds them or focuses them and brings them back to the poem, or brings them back to what you're talking about. And so,
I'm really glad that you just said the listener, because that was my addendum to the question. There is a huge difference between reading someone else's work on the printed page and hearing the work expressed. Do you take great pains to try and make sure your poetry is performable without you kind of coaching what the intentionality of it is? Like, are you using capital letters? Are you showing that emphasis with the way you space things out?
That's a great question. And as time has gone on, I have definitely become more intentional. Initially, I will say, I came up in the spoken word poetry scene, which Steve is a few years older than me. Steve was there, and there were a lot of people from Wanda Coleman to even Rollins, and to a whole lot of folks, Steve and these different people that were very performative. And there was sort of this intersection of punk rock and Harry, Michael C. Ford, these guys, so the oral thing was, I think I am an oral listener. I always say my wife is a painter, my wife is real visual, but I'm more of an oral guy. And so like, I think, they say the best way to edit your piece is just read it aloud, even your essays. So I think the audio has always been a big part of everything.
Should take more time.
Jennifer, may I say one last thing? Jennifer?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about Fernando, and two things about Fernando. I loved him, he's my favorite, but one time I was watching him pitch a perfect game, and Vin Scully was calling the game, and at the end of the game, Vin says, they're throwing their sombreros in the air. And then I used to go to the House of Pies on Western and Franklin, and there was a Hispanic counterman, and we'd be talking about the Dodgers all the time. So one time I went in there, we were talking about the game the night before, and he goes like this. He pointed over my shoulder. And he said, Fernando. I said, what do you mean? He said, Fernando's over there. So I turned around, I said, which one? And he said, the guy with the gray cap. So I have never asked for an autograph in my life. So I went and got a takeout delivery menu. And I walked over to him and I said, Fernando, could you sign this to Holly and me? And so he didn't even really look at me. He just took it with his left-handed, wrote it down, and then he gave it to me. And I still have that. That's in my archives. But then as he walked out, he was walking out. He goes, "But I love Fernando."
Yeah. No, man, he was like, I mean, he changed, folk hero, the way he was, I mean, the Dodgers, first of all, have that ability to kind of ignite the folk imagination of Los Angeles. I mean, the Lakers are great and I love them, but I don't know, something about like the Dodgers, it's like, it's just baseball. It's got that old schoolness, but Fernando was he was, I remember listening, it's the kind of thing like, they rolling in the TV to the typing class to watch the playoffs. And I think his first, one of his first games was, he came in as a reliever in the playoffs. And it was just like, who is this phenomenon? Who is this guy? Just igniting the world.
I was in the first grade, man, and it was like first year I played Little League Baseball, and Fernando Mania swept 1981, man. It swept the city.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it also it empowered, so many, like the Latino community had a public face in a way that it had not.
It made them like the Dodgers because
Chavez
Ravine, they never did that.
That was true. No, after Chavez Ravine, it was just like no way. But obviously now it's being a Dodger fan is a really big part of SoCal, Southland culture for all kinds of folks, but definitely in the Latino community. But at the time, it was also this like giving voice, personality to the immigrant experience. I mean, there were so many people who had come like he had without much, and were just like toiling to really keep the city going, and he was this, he really, he brought so much together. It was this really powerful sports moment where you could see, achievement in sports and, empowerment and culture just brought together in this really simple, direct way. So.
And that reached well outside of Los Angeles.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to do is just to go back to you two for a minute and thank you both. I know how much both of you work with young poets. And, Steve, you've given readings at Skylight with your students, I think in middle school.
Yeah.
And it was always a pleasure. I remember reading one time at your home.
Yeah.
You had some of your students, these, I don't know how old they were, 10, 11, 12. And just marvelous to hear these young Hispanic children reading poetry. And I could see how much they loved you. And it's important for all of us, to see YouTube models of, being like Johnny Appleseed, if you will, and inspiring the next generation, which they, here too, if I may just talk for one brief minute, you see behind Jennifer 100 years, MPTF, this is its 100th year.
Wow.
So there's quite the legacy. I mean, it's a storied institution of giving back to the community. I'm one of thousands and thousands of people who have benefited, and we hope there will be another 100 years. But I noticed that some of the people that I've seen on some of the shows that Jennifer has produced of how they talk about instilling the legacy of giving back to your own community. So that's you two are doing it in poetry. And so I just wanted to thank you both for that for what you do. That's important. And so that's all I have to say. So thank you both. And there's Jennifer.
Jennifer, thank you. And Harry, really quick, I just want to say thank you so much, Harry. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And really quickly, I've had 5 or 6 students that I taught in college that were in Steve's class in junior high and high school. And we usually figure out about the second or the third week. They say, oh, I grew up in Silver Lake, or I was in downtown. I was like, do you by any chance know Steve Abee? They're like, that was my senior year. I was like, that's my buddy. He's the guy. And I've had Armenian students, Chicano students, Asian students, all kinds of students that had Steve as a teacher. And so it's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you guys for inspiring the up and coming generations and for sharing your artistry with, you know, all of our peers and the residents here at the campus. Hopefully, when things open up a little bit more, you can join us live here on the campus for whether it's your own work or Harry curates a really wonderful performance that's like you did Walt Whitman previously. I'm failing to remember the other.
Heart Cranes the Bridge.
Heart Cranes the Bridge.
Wow.
And we did Duino Elegies recently on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, and I said this at the time, that was one of the best episodes of Harry's Poetry Hour that we've ever experienced. It was really fantastic. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, for sure.
So do join us. Thank you for being with us today.
Hey, you know, I just want to say thanks to, I see Phoebe in the comments there. Phoebe.
Phoebe.
You know, it's good to see you. I just put a little shout out. There's a book that Phoebe's in from back in the day. It's a Bolinas anthology. They reissued On the Mesa, which is a really cool collection of poets who were living in Bolinas. You know, back it's like, I guess it's 71 when it's published. Anyway, it's a beautiful piece, beautiful book. Just, you know, and Phoebe's got some wonderful poetry in there. Really, really cool.
Harry, what do you think? Are you inspired?
I'm always inspired. And you talked about the Duino Elegies, this right here, living right here in this hour. You lifted us all up. You took us to school. You took us to church. You took us to the intersections of LA. You know, you took us from community to community. So, you know, couldn't be any better. Thank you, Mike, the poet, Sonksen, and thank you, Steve Abee, and thank you, Jennifer Clymer.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you very much.
Cheers, Jennifer. Thank you, Harry.
Absolutely.
Harry, thank you. Steve, thank you, guys.
I'm going to put one more quick plug in. If there are students of yours that you think would benefit from coming on and sharing their work, people that you still stay in touch with, let Harry know.
Okay.
We'd love to have I heard a new phrase today, co-generational.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Great idea.
That's
All right. Thank you, guys.